Nebraska Talk here for the next 60 minutes on the Voice of College Football, GBR. Appreciate everybody being here, as always, on a Tuesday at 6 Central Time, 7 Eastern. But yes, 6 Central, where it counts. Talking Huskers football with all of you. Big recruiting month. We will get to it with Greg Peterson from Husker Online here in just a second, but we're going to talk Oklahoma football right out of the gate. Greg, how's it going?
Going well. How about you, Mark?
I am doing well. I am good. And I guess we will hop right to it since we've got our guest lined up. We introduced a series a couple weeks ago in which we were going through all the opponents on the schedule. And this is a special one. This is a big one. And, of course, one of the great rivalries from past decades in the history of college football. Oklahoma pays the return trip to Nebraska in September. We got Parker Thune on the line from OU Insider on 247 Sports. You can also catch him every weekday at noon Central Time on 94.7 The Ref. Parker, how you doing today?
Doing fantastic, Mark. Always a pleasure. How are you?
I am doing just fine. This is Greg Peterson here from Husker Online.
Nice to meet you, Parker.
Good to meet you as well, Greg.
Well, Parker, I will get things started and let Greg cut loose as well after I launch the conversation, because I get a chance to talk to Parker on a regular basis. But, let's catch the Nebraska audience up to date on the Brent Venables regime and maybe some differences between Brent Venables and Lincoln Riley and how things are being approached there in Norman.
Yeah, well, the differences between Venables and Riley, philosophically speaking, that's more of a long-term type of difference. That's not something that I'm sure is going to be as evident on a game-by-game basis in 2022. That's one of the types of things where you're going to have to see how Brent Venables constructs his roster year in and year out, how he recruits, how he conducts his program, and how he upgrades the facilities at Oklahoma. So to me, I think the philosophical differences between Venables and Riley aren't going to be as conspicuous in 2022 as I think a lot of people would like them to be. I think a lot of people would like to see a stark difference between the Oklahoma football team that we see in 2022 versus the Oklahoma football team that we saw in 2021. What I do think is interesting and probably the most compelling storyline for the Sooners in 2022 is the fact that the roster looks so different a year ago. No longer do you have Spencer Rattler. No longer do you have Caleb Williams. Jaden Hazelwood's gone. Austin Stogner's gone. Mario Williams is gone. When you take a look at a lot of these contributors on both sides of the ball for Oklahoma a year ago, a lot of those guys have transferred or made their way to the NFL. Now, what Venables did, what the Oklahoma staff did, was they brought in a whole lot of high-impact transfers, experienced guys who have played a lot of football at the FBS level, so that you're not starting from scratch as much so as you would be otherwise. If you are starting from scratch, you're at least starting with guys who have been there and done that, although Oklahoma is new digs for them.
So, Parker, in looking at Oklahoma, Nebraska, to bring that Husker flavor into the conversation. Of course, when I was growing up, this was one of the great games in college football. It's been on pause now for 12 or 13 years, aside from what we saw in Norman last year, where it was an unexpected close game, 23-16. Now the return trip to Norman. I got to think that obviously the fan boards are focused on Brent Venables. What are the additions going to look like? Dylan Gabriel led offense and all those things, and less about individual games going forward. But is there anything generated, especially considering that a 3-win Husker team that should be pretty much improved this year is the top transfer portal team in the Big Ten? The return trip is coming in September.
Yeah, people are stoked for this game, Mark. They really are. And, for me, this is going to be a really cool opportunity to go cover a game up there because I grew up in Nebraska, graduated high school there. So obviously I haven't been to a game in Memorial Stadium since I want to say 2008. Nebraska won on a bitterly cold day, 45-35 over Kansas. And the thing that sticks out to me most about that day was Ndamukong Suh caught a touchdown pass, which was a fun little coda to that game. But no, this is a rivalry where you look at the narrative arc of college football history, Mark. There was a time for probably about a quarter century where you can make the argument that this was the biggest rivalry in college football. There was no rivalry on a year in, year out basis that meant as much as Oklahoma versus Nebraska, because both of these teams perennially were among the elites of college football. They were the heavy hitters in contention for national championships. You think back to the days of Barry Switzer and the days of Tom Osborne at Oklahoma and Nebraska, respectively. This is a rivalry that a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle just miss. And the game last year in Norman was a little bit anticlimactic, all things considered. Neither team played especially well. Oklahoma ended up preserving a 23-16 victory. And now as you look ahead to this year, there's a significant contingent of Sooner fans that are going to make the trek up to Lincoln. You know, you think about the older demographic of the Oklahoma fan base. A lot of them are well acquainted with making that trip. And despite the hiatus, they're pumped about the opportunity to watch this rivalry be renewed at Memorial Stadium. I was pretty bummed to find out last week that apparently there's a helium shortage, and so Nebraska isn't doing the red balloons thing anymore. It's gosh, that's one of the great traditions in college football for my money. So bummed that won't be a part of it. But with so much history and so much at stake between these two teams, obviously Scott Frost at Nebraska trying to hold on to his job after a pretty ho-hum tenure thus far, and Brent Venables in what will be his first road game as Oklahoma's head coach, trying to essentially find that launch pad to get his team in contention early and generate some buzz as a potential Big 12 championship contender. This is a game that a lot of folks are looking forward to on September 17th. And I think for many, the game that they are most looking forward to, in fact, over the course of this 2022 season.
Interesting. All right, then. Looks like Parker's taking over the show, so I'm going to take the rest of the night off there, guys.
No, it is time for you to jump in.
No, hey, you know what? I think it's going to be great to see Oklahoma fans, walking around outside the stadium before game time and having them in the stands again. I mean, obviously, like Parker, I mean, I grew up here too, probably a little bit older than Parker is, but so I grew up with this rivalry as well, and I agree. In my mind, it's always been the rivalry in college football. You can say what you want about all those old school rivalries, your Michigan, Ohio State, your Notre Dame, USC. I mean, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Nebraska, Oklahoma always had a special flavor. And I think last year going into that game too, that nobody gave Nebraska much of a shooter's chance to stand up to OU, and like we just talked about, that it was a pretty close game. Went right down to the wire pretty much. So, I think that instilled a little bit of confidence in Nebraska and the Nebraska fan base as well. And we'll see what it's two teams renewing an old rivalry, but it's two teams that honestly we don't even know what they're going to look like when they take the field at this point. Lots of different faces on both sides of the rivalry here, and Nebraska also has a lot of new coaches, not the head coach, but a lot of new coaches on the offensive side of the ball too. So that's what sticks out in my mind, is that I think it's two unknowns at this point right now. Obviously, I think that not covering Oklahoma like Parker does, just kind of the national perspective is, I think most people think Oklahoma's going to be down this year. But listening to Parker, it doesn't sound that way to me. So I think it's going to be an exciting matchup. And obviously, I've got this one circled. I'm waiting for this game more than I am going over to Ireland for Northwestern to start the year.
I think down is the lower half of the top 10. I
mean, a couple of games,
sure.
It's a lost column that usually wouldn't be there, is what I'm calling down.
So naturally on our Nebraska show with Parker coming in to set us up for Oklahoma, Nebraska on September 17th, our first question comes in from a Notre Dame fan, of course, D-Rock Irish.
We love him, though.
Commenting here that with Dylan Gabriel being the starting quarterback, but it being a bit thin behind him. Of course, they get some help in recent weeks via Pittsburgh. Parker, just discuss Dylan Gabriel, what he brings to the table, and then the backup quarterback situation as it stands right now.
Yeah, so it's a phenomenal point there, and I think that's the overarching concern, the preeminent concern for a lot of Sooner fans heading into the 2022 season is what happens if, knock on wood, Dylan Gabriel goes down with an injury? Because you look at what Gabriel has done, started from the jump as a true freshman at UCF, has been the starter there for 2.5 seasons, had his 2021 season cut short due to a shoulder injury. But for the most part, he's been one of the most productive quarterbacks in the country very quietly over the last couple of years, 70-14 touchdown interception ratio. So Oklahoma has a lot of confidence in Dylan Gabriel to be the guy. But if you look at the quarterback room behind him, there are 3 additional scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. None of them are particularly experienced. You're looking at Davis Bevel, the transfer from Pittsburgh, who got some decent run in the Peach Bowl while Kenny Pickett I suppose he opted out. So that's the reason you saw a little bit of Davis Bevel in the Peach Bowl, but that's the most action he's seen across his 3 years at the collegiate level. The Sooners bring in a true freshman, Nick Evers, 4-star signee out of Flower Mound, Texas. It was a guy that was among the top 10 quarterback prospects in the class of 2022. A lot of talent, big arm, lightning quick release. But for those that watched Oklahoma's spring game, it was very evident that Evers is still adjusting to the pace of the collegiate game and still a work in progress when it comes to going through his progressions and being able to scan the field. And then the Sooners most recently brought in a guy that has just the best name in all of college football, General Booty, the transfer from Tyler Junior College. And if you take a look at his high school tape and what he was able to do at Tyler in his lone season on the JUCO circuit, he was actually the nation's leading passer across the JUCO ranks. He's a guy that has a lot of talent, was somewhat under-recruited, and I would say just looking at the room as things stand, there's a very good chance that he's your QB2 heading into the season. But between Bevel, Evers, and Booty, you have 3 guys that are capable, sure, but unproven. And so that is kind of the doomsday scenario for Oklahoma. If Dylan Gabriel goes down, then one way or another, regardless of who QB2 is, it's somebody that quite simply hasn't played a whole lot of college football or any college football yet.
Parker, we hear the ire come out from the fan base here with Nebraska. And as you well know, we've got our Oklahoma channel as well. When Fox, even though it's been much promoted for a few years now, that they are moving that prime game to the noon slot Eastern time, which becomes 11 a.m. Central time, that a lot of people don't like that. But that is where it's set. So if you heard too much from the fan base regarding the kickoff time.
Yeah, the reality, Mark, is that nobody really loves 11 a.m. kickoffs, particularly for a rivalry game like this. And I understand that Fox has the broadcast rights and the 11 a.m. window is kind of their prime time window. But this was an 11 a.m. kickoff last year. It's going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff this year. I think a lot of folks on both the Oklahoma side and the Nebraska side were hoping that given the history between these two teams, it was going to commandeer a little bit more respect and maybe at the very least get an afternoon kick time. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, both these programs are going to play a football game on September 17th. I'm not convinced anybody in either locker room is concerned about when it's happening. They're just concerned about going out there and getting a win. So I understand it's not the greatest draw for the fans, and maybe it complicates travel a little bit more where you're having to get in on Friday night as opposed to being able to make the road trip on Saturday morning. But that's the price you pay for college football at times. And with as magnificent as this rivalry has been over the years and how excited both of these fan bases are to watch them hit the field at Memorial Stadium, I think it'll all be water under the bridge by the time September rolls around.
Question for both of you. On the recruiting front, I got to think in the heyday of the 70s through 90s into the 2000s. And of course, these two teams played in the final 2 Big 12 championship games in which Nebraska was part of the conference, that they were knocking heads on the recruiting trail on a regular basis. Now, here in the last 5+ years, you see Oklahoma recruiting classes in the top 5 to 10 in the nation, Nebraska more in the low teens to 25 range. Has the recruiting landscape changed because of Nebraska's move to the Big Ten? How do you both see that?
I would say, Greg, you're probably more qualified to answer that question up front than I am. So why don't you go ahead?
Well, first off, I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit on what Parker was talking about with the kickoff time. Quite frankly, it punishes Nebraska in my mind, because you make an 11 a.m. kickoff, which makes it a pain in the butt to get official visitors on campus for that game when you're flying them in from the East Coast or wherever they're coming from. So yeah, Nebraska never wants to play a home game, especially with the marquee matchup that they have on their schedule as a home game during the year, and the biggest rival they've ever had. Obviously, you would love to have that as a 7 o'clock kickoff, or at least a 2:30. I mean, those are your 2 time slots that you covet. The Fox Big Noon Saturday thing is garbage in my mind. But yeah, they own the rights to it, so it's their call. But especially when Nebraska is trying to get a foothold against programs like Oklahoma that have a recruiting edge, this is like a slap in the face, if you ask me. So yeah, I'm totally upset with the kickoff time, because we were hoping. I mean, most of us thought it was going to be the prime time matchup that night. But oh well, it is what it is. So yeah, I went off on my tirade there, but well, I forget the recruiting question. What you asked?
If I'm going to play Fox executive, Greg, I would tell you that is our primetime matchup. We've been telling you that for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, you got to wake everybody up at the butt crack of dawn to get ready for the game. So yeah, we don't like it around here, and I know Oklahoma fans don't like it either. But you know what? Hey, we just like Parker said, you gotta, they're gonna suit up, they're gonna play. It's not gonna affect anybody watching the game. It's not gonna affect the attendance in the stadium. The players don't give a crap themselves, but I'm telling you right now, the Nebraska coaches do, because obviously you mark that on your calendar as probably your biggest recruiting weekend of the year. I mean, because you don't have Ohio State coming in this year. So yeah, you looked at that Oklahoma game when the schedule comes out and said, hey, this is what we target to get all those top recruits in that, you used to go head to head against Oklahoma, and you still do. But yeah, that's my biggest hang up on it, is that, they think about TV and all this, and they don't think about the long range of the benefits and, how it affects a program. So, yeah. I think since the move to the Big Ten, though, recruiting-wise, Nebraska really doesn't recruit. I mean, they still recruit a lot of the players Oklahoma does, but not to the extent that they used to, because Nebraska, while in the Big 12, recruited Texas very heavily. They don't do that anymore, just for the fact that it's harder to get Texas kids to come to Nebraska. Now, you're still going to get a handful of them every year, but it's just a lot harder to get them to come to Nebraska when they don't play, in the state. Because you used to play, every year you'd play at least 2 games in the state of Texas. So those kids could come home and it felt real to them. Now it's a little bit different. There's different dynamics, different conference, different dynamics on people that you recruit. So it really, you're always going to see Nebraska go head-to-head with Oklahoma on recruits from around this region. Kids from Kansas, kids from Oklahoma. Nebraska gets a good share of kids from Oklahoma year in and year out. Those kids that get, they feel like they get slighted by Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and Nebraska is going to offer out there, hey, it's not very far away. I can drive there. My family can drive down and see me play. So that's always going to be there, no matter what conference either team is in. But yeah, it's just not the same head-to-head that it used to be when you're going after the same caliber recruits. I mean, you go back to Buki. I mean, Buki Radley-Hiles was a guy that was committed to Nebraska, ended up going to Oklahoma. But that's the kind of dynamic you used to have recruiting these two schools. Nowadays, last 3 or 4 years, it's not been like that. You're not getting the big decision kids. I think it's more Nebraska gets kids from Oklahoma that don't have Oklahoma offers, and vice versa, with Oklahoma kind of targeting different types of athletes than Nebraska does in the recruiting process these days.
Parker Thune's on the line from OU Insider 247 Sports. You can also catch him on his show weekdays on 94.7 The Ref. Parker, question coming in concerning from Moonbot concerning Oklahoma's linebacking core and some assessment there.
So as far as the linebackers at Oklahoma, is there any particular question they're in, or just kind of an overview?
Just said, how does, let's see, I've lost track of it, but it was pretty much just, how did the OU linebackers look?
Yeah, so obviously the Sooners lose Brian Asamoah, who was an early third-round pick in the NFL draft in the Minnesota Vikings. He is the one that needs to be replaced in that linebacker core. The good news for Oklahoma is that Danny Stutzman blossomed as a true freshman a year ago, 3-star recruit out of Winter Garden, Florida, entered with pretty minimal expectations for year one, but immediately emerged even before the season began throughout fall camp as one of the guys that was going to make his name known at the linebacker position and was going to force his way onto the field one way or another. He started the season off really hot, was the leading tackler for the team through 2 games before dislocating his elbow, which forced him to miss the ensuing 3 games. So that kind of sidelined his campaign. Asamoah was easily the Sooners' best linebacker a season ago, and that was reflected in the draft stock that you saw for him in the 2022 NFL draft. But as far as the linebackers are concerned, to me, Stutzman is going to be the meat and potatoes of that linebacking core. He's the guy, and I've heard from people close to the team, just having conversations about the outlook of the defense as a whole, that Stutzman might be pound for pound the best player on Oklahoma's entire defense. And I think if you watched him play last year, you could see that potential kind of starting to materialize. So especially with the addition of new strength coach Jerry Schmidt, who is revered across the industry, Stutzman's one of those guys that stands to benefit from the new S&C regimen and should be primed for at least 100 tackles this season. Outside of Stutzman, Deshaun White is a 5th-year senior and 3-year starter coming back. TD Roof, the son of new defensive coordinator Ted Roof, transferred in from Appalachian State and is a 6th-year senior. He's a guy that, while diminutive, only about 5'11", 230 pounds, is a guy that emerged throughout the spring as somebody that just gets it and knows where to be on the field, obviously has that experience having played at the Power 5 level with Georgia Tech as well as with Appalachian State. So he's a guy that should get some snaps this fall as well. Stutzman, TD Roof, Deshaun White, and then everybody is immensely excited about incoming true freshman Jaron Kanik, 4-star signee out of the state of Kansas, who was going to play for Brent Venables at Clemson until Venables took the head coaching job at Oklahoma, at which point Kanik followed him. This kid might be the freakiest athlete on the entire depth chart. In winter testing periods, he ran a 4.4 in the 40-yard dash and bench pressed 275 pounds 12 times as an incoming early enrollee freshman. So that gives you an idea of the type of athletic ability that he has. Also has a 40-inch vertical jump, in just among the freakiest football players you will ever see at that age. So Sooner fans and the coaching staff alike very, very excited about his potential. So it becomes a question of who emerges alongside Stutzman, whether that is Deshaun White, whether that is TD Roof, Kanik, or David Agwebu, another returner who has some starting experience.
Greg, anything else for Parker?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. All righty. Very, very good.
Where'd you go to high school here?
Oh, man, I don't know if you've ever even heard of it. A little high school in Omaha up on 156th and Fort called Concordia.
Oh, sure. Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I graduated with 85 people. So
okay.
There you go.
Okay. I'm a Lincoln East guy. So
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Malachi Coleman.
You got it. Yeah, he's a stud. I'm sure
He is indeed a stud.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some of the video on him. He's taking his official visit this weekend here in Lincoln for Friday Night Lights. So
yeah, I know
should be good.
Oklahoma's getting him for an unofficial on the 10th and are hoping to bring him back around for an OV. I'm not entirely sure whether that'll happen or not. I know he's got a lot of interest right now.
I went and watched him last week in state track, and he was the favorite in the 100 and the 200, and he ended up second in both, and wasn't happy. Was not happy at all. So,
no.
But for a 6'6" guy that can run the 100 and 200, he's a pretty special freak of an athlete right there as well. So.
Yeah, and as he adds weight, should only get better. Should be able to be a high-end contributor at the next level as either a tight end or an outside linebacker. So, yeah, really, really excited about him. And
outside linebacker's his spot. Yep.
Yeah, he's got a chance to be one of the best that has come through the Cornhusker state in a long, long time.
Absolutely. And the best ever from my alma mater. I'll throw that in there. I've never seen a guy like that at my old school before.
No doubt.
Parker, some of us appreciate your ode to Andre Dawson, Gary Carter, Tim Raines, and so forth, where they're with the Montreal Expo. So thank you for that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Parker Thune, OU Insider, and catch him weekdays. Again, you'll do a much better job, Parker, of letting people know exactly where they can find your radio show.
Yes. So the Ref Sports Radio Network all across the state of Oklahoma on affiliates. If you're in Oklahoma City or thereabouts, which the vast majority of the state of Oklahoma is, obviously OKC is the most populous city. You can be found on 94.7 FM. I'm on air with Mike Steely, who is an icon across this state on the radio scene from 12 to 2, and then with Tyler McComas from 2 to 3 for the recruiting hour. So that is where you can find me on the radio on a weekly basis.
Parker, thank you so much. You know I'll be tracking you down at some point. We appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, Mark. Take care.
We'll see you in Lincoln.
You will indeed.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good.
Take care, Greg.
You too.
All right, good stuff from Parker Thune on Oklahoma, Nebraska, Game 3. Should be special, should be good. And Greg, if I ever want to wake up the audience between now and then, I'm going to ask you about the game time for Oklahoma and Nebraska.
What is it, like 11 at night or 11 in the morning? I can't remember. I think it's an AM game.
For some reason, people are a little somewhat questioning the quarterback situation. So, of course, Casey Thompson should be the starter. There's a comment in here. It's going to be tough to find, but in regards to the physical capabilities of Parker, Harburg Heinrich, and that he's bigger, stronger, better arm, all those things.
Well, he is, but he's just a pup still. You know, he really hasn't played a meaningful snap since high school at this point. But you know, he's a guy that obviously Nebraska targeted early on as a local product at a Kearney Catholic high school that has all the intangibles that you're looking for as an NFL quarterback. He's got a cannon. There's no question about that. And he's freakishly athletic for his size too. I remember commenting on this show when I watched him play in high school that his coach was putting him at gunner on the punt return on the punt team. You know, you're putting your starting 6'6" quarterback out there at gunner. It's pretty wild. And he, you know, was a kick returner and a punt returner. He was a track guy too in high school. So yeah, he's very athletic. He just doesn't have the experience yet. And he had the benefit of the COVID year, so he's still a freshman. So he's got a long way to go. Now, yeah, speaking about Casey Thompson's durability, you know, I think that's a good question, and it's still in question because I don't think we've seen him be available for an entire season when he was at Texas either. So But it's a good problem to have. When you throw in Chuba Purdy as well, who looked really good in the spring once he actually started practicing. That you've got a lot of options there if Casey Thompson is to go down. And I generally believe that that Heinrich Haarberg will have his day as the starting quarterback here at Nebraska. It's just that he's got to wait his turn, which is not a problem for him because that was the plan with him all along. He knew he was going to have to wait a couple, 2 or 3 years to get his shot, and he's perfectly fine with that. So if he does get pressed into service, you know what? I have all the confidence in the world that he'll perform well.
Steven's here. Appreciate you being here, Steven. So he's asking about wondering whether you feel good about the defensive line now and whether you think it's better than last year.
I'm thrilled with what they did in the transfer portal and what they added and replaced. You brought in 3 guys that have a lot of playing experience at the Division I level, at a high level too. And you bring in that coveted pass rusher in O'Shawn Mathis that you're really, you're going to rely on him to help other guys along like Garrett Nelson. And they might just all of a sudden have a scary pass rush with what they've added. And then, an inside guy as well that has a lot of experience and is known as a run stuffer. So, and then you still have your young guys here that you've been bringing up. So I think dramatically in the last, 30 days, I think Nebraska has really upgraded their defensive line to where that I'm sure that Eric Shenander is finally feeling comfortable now since Tony Tuioti left to go to Oregon, I think, because it was looking bleak there for a little while, and you're seeing some guys leave, and people were all up in arms when Casey Rogers decided to hit the transfer portal and end up at Oregon with Coach Tuioti. But you look at what they replaced him with, and you got to love it. So, I think all of a sudden, like I said, in the last month or so, I think the defensive line all of a sudden looks pretty formidable. Just can't wait to see them all together out there and see how it meshes.
Considering what you had to say about the kickoff time for the Oklahoma game, do you want to know who Fox scheduled for the primetime game that night?
Yeah,
you want to hear this one?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Ohio State.
Uh-huh.
And you would expect somebody big, right? Ohio State, Toledo.
Oh, my goodness.
That's the primetime game.
Wow. So that's going to be, about 52-0 at halftime?
Give or take a touchdown. Yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's really kind of a slap in the face. There's some, even with the kickoff time, Fox has Nebraska as their primetime game 2 out of the first 4 weeks of the season. And the only other team that can say that is Oklahoma. So, hey, Fox thinks they're doing Oklahoma and Nebraska a favor, I guess.
Yeah, I actually saw that game time when all those game times were coming out. About a week ago? There was a glut of game times that came out about a week ago, and I saw that game time on the Ohio State schedule, and I just assumed it was a Big Ten Network game. It's a Fox game.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, but if I'm kind of looking at it right as well, the primetime Saturday night game that Fox puts up against the ABC game is never the matchup that the ABC game is.
No.
So I think Fox doesn't want that time slot. They don't feature that time slot.
No, they don't. And I don't know if that's good programming or not, because to a certain extent, they've basically said we're going to highlight noon and that's going to be our game. I don't know if you just flat out give up on prime time, though. You would think that they could,
right. Yeah,
but
yeah.
the noon games on the other networks, you put all those together, ESPN, ABC, they're usually pretty good games too. So I don't know that Fox completely dominates at noon. I don't know. I'd have to go through the numbers. But anyway, got Logan Williams here saying, Greg, what do you think the Nebraska coaching staff is most worried about in the opposition messaging hard in practice the week of the Oklahoma game? Same question. We don't have Parker here, but I don't know if you're following that question is probably, hopefully, better than I am.
In the opposite messaging, or is that
how I guess Oklahoma is messaging in practice?
that
I think
doesn't
they're
make
worried.
more like I think that sounds more like how they are practicing. I mean, how intense they're practicing sounds like what he's trying to say. Well, that's if you ask any of the coaches, they're going to tell you we take this week by week. I mean, in their minds, and well, they instill in the players' minds that we're not thinking about Oklahoma. We're thinking about Northwestern. We'll think about Oklahoma when the time comes. Obviously, there's a game in between there that you probably think Nebraska's going to overlook a little bit. I'm not sure who Oklahoma plays before they play Nebraska, but I think both of those teams are obviously pointing at that game as how they're going to set the tone for the season. Obviously, neither one of those teams wants to lose. Oklahoma sure as hell doesn't want to come into Lincoln and get a loss on their schedule early on like that. I don't think the coaches really worry about what the opposition is doing or saying. That's just not in their mindset. I mean, they're worried about their guys, their team, and how they're going through the practice on the week leading up to that game. Because you can always tell if a team is having bad practices, that's going to translate into the game. Then they play like crap. But here it sounds like they've always had the best practice of the season every time, so you don't know. Whatever they can tell you is they had a great practice, and then they play like crap in the game. So you take it for what it's worth.
So I would think that Nebraska fans would be okay with this. Last season, Casey Thompson against Oklahoma, and I looked this up because I thought the numbers were pretty darn good when they put up 48 points against the Sooners. Casey Thompson, 388 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, no picks. I think Nebraska fans would take that this year.
I think so. Yeah, that would be that would make Husker fans extremely excited.
Not too bad. Not too bad. We remind everyone we're here every Tuesday, 6 Central, 7 Eastern, Nebraska Cornhuskers live with you. We've been here for 71 consecutive weeks. We thank Greg. He's here every week answering your questions. And we would like to build this show even further, of course. We would love to be around for a long, long time. So bring not only your comments and questions, but bring some folks in here. As you can see from the live chat, we not only have Nebraska fans, that's the number one priority. We want as many Husker fans as possible, but other college football fans, you're certainly welcome as well. So bring them on in, get them on in here next Tuesday at 6 Central. All right. So you mentioned to me before we went live, big weekend coming up this weekend. So are there camps and official visits or just visits?
Yeah.
Both.
This weekend kicks off Friday Night Lights on June 3rd is Nebraska's first big camp. And you have got up to 15 official visitors coming in for the weekend. We have confirmed 13 of them right now. And so this is the biggest official visit weekend that Scott Frost has had since he's been here. I think the previous most, I think, was 8 that they had in one weekend of official visitors, and that was for an Ohio State game weekend. So this is huge. They haven't had a weekend like this since Mike Riley's final year as head coach, when he had a bunch of guys come in on a one weekend type deal like this. So yeah, it's a big weekend, and then on Sunday is the Pipeline Camp, the Adidas Pipeline Camp as well. So you've got 2 big camps. Also, there's the Jake Sharp Camp on Thursday in Wichita that my boss is pleading with me to go to, which also hosts a lot of Nebraska targets in there. Dylan Edwards is the guy that sticks out, the offensive tackle out of Kansas City that just had his visit unofficial last weekend here. So there's a lot going on, and teams can only have 10 camp days during the summer, and Nebraska is using 8 of those 10 to host camps here on campus, which there'll be another Friday Night Lights camp in 3 weeks. And then there's also a 7-on-7 camp that they'll be having. And then other coaches will be out on the road at various satellite camps as well. So, yeah, recruiting's really picked up. You can pretty much officially say that they're done with the 2022 class with, the latest edition last week of the wide receiver Washington. So that puts Nebraska over the 85 scholarship limit right now. So I think they can pretty much close the door. They were expecting a JUCO defensive end that might have been coming in this weekend for a visit. He's not going to. So I think they're done. So all the focus now moves to the 2023 class. And so that's highlighted by a guy that we just talked about a little bit ago, is Malachi Coleman, the Lincoln East product that has taken his official visit here. So this is Nebraska's big time here to impress a guy that's already, visited probably more times than we can count already. But this is going to be the big push. And besides him, Maverick Noonan is another, the second highest ranked player in the state, will also be here doing his. And both of these guys are right now, they're weighing their options. They're taking other visits as well. I know Maverick's already got, after this weekend, he'll go to Minnesota on June 10th, and then Stanford on June 17th, and then Iowa on June 24th. So these guys are starting to narrow things down. Obviously, they have offers from, all kinds of big boys across the country. Another guy that's going to be in is a offensive lineman out of Scottsbluff, Nebraska, Garrett Nelson's old school, Brock Knudsen. He's a monster. He's 6'9". He transferred into Scottsbluff from a smaller school right close to there. And he all of a sudden blew up and is getting offers from everybody. He's going to go check out Iowa State on the 17th as well. So Nebraska wants to lock up this guy because these guys don't grow on trees. I mean, he's 6'9", 320 pounds, and doesn't have an ounce of fat on him. He is a monster. Another recent offer Nebraska put out was Cade McIntyre. He's a Fremont Bergen product. He's like a five-tool baseball player. You can put him in all kinds of positions. And he's a guy that Nebraska just offered that because he's been starting to blow up as well. He had a younger brother or older brother that just graduated last year, but he's picked up new offers, like I said, from Nebraska, but Iowa, Tennessee, and Oklahoma State have just offered him too. So, he's another guy that's going to be in here this weekend. So yeah, there's a lot going on. And then, the rest of that gets filled out with out of state guys that they're counting on the guys that I just talked about, the in-state guys, to kind of lead the charge and really help them fill out their 2023 class right now. So it's a very, very big weekend here. And, you know, every time I've seen and been to a Friday Night Lights camp here, they started up under Coach Riley, and they've kept them going since. It's a big deal. Fans are welcome in to watch, and the fans get into it, especially during the one-on-ones. The wide receiver DB one-on-ones are always fan favorites, and you know, we've seen big-time shows from big prospects take part in this over the years. So yeah, I'm excited. And it's gonna be sweet. There's gonna be a lot of guys out there on the field that we're gonna get a good look at, and hopefully Nebraska can impress them. And obviously, like I said, they lay out the red carpet and do all kinds of barbecues, and you know, it's a whole weekend deal. And then, you know, some of the guys stay around for the pipeline camp as well, which the pipeline camp, if you're not familiar with it, Adidas just started that up a couple years ago, and it's a national camp, and they hold it right here. They call it the Pipeline because Nebraska's famous offensive line called the Pipeline that, you know, kind of fell to the wayside here lately. But it's a big deal. You get prospects come in from all across the country, some of the top defensive and offensive linemen out there in the country. So yeah, big weekend. I can't wait. I'm going to be very busy. So don't try to get a hold of me this weekend, Mark.
Okay, I will take note of that. Greg's not ignoring me. He says he's busy. He's not putting me off. So I will remember that. All right. That means you're going to have a lot of great information for us next Tuesday.
Yep. Plenty of video, and yeah, it'll be you know, it's kind of turned into the biggest weekend or the biggest week of the summer around here. Because usually the Friday Night Lights 2 camp is usually the bigger one, but they've kind of concentrated on this first one this year. So they're putting all their eggs in one basket right here this weekend. And I think probably because of having the pipeline camp on the same weekend is probably why they're doing that. And then the following Friday Night Lights camp will be on the same weekend as they hold the 7-on-7, which will be on that following Saturday. And you find some diamonds in the rough at that too. So yeah, we'll see.
Join our Discord. You can talk Huskers all the time. Just go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, sign up right there, patreon.com, and I'll get you a link, and you join our Discord with about 55 or 60 other college football fans. Logan is asking, can you explain the recent elimination of the 25 scholarship limit?
Yeah, Logan, it's all come about with you know, having the backup of COVID years, of having a backlog of players that had additional years added on to their eligibility, plus with the transfer portal that has blown up the way it is, that nowadays it's, you know, you're the number now is 85 scholarships that you're limited to. So they basically have eliminated the 25 scholarship limit per year, so that, you know, schools can bring in 30 scholarship guys if they need to, just because of the way things have changed with, you know, because of the factors that I just mentioned. So yeah, this is a fluid situation that keeps on changing, but I think that the NCAA is just trying to scramble around and try to make things as fair as possible, without, you know, dubbing the pay-to-play players, which you already know is going on. You know, Nick Saban's informed us all. But yeah, I think it's just more just kind of tries to even the playing field, because, you know, you're going to bring in as many guys as you need to round out your 85 scholarship limit right now. And which also in turn means that there are no limits on the amount of players that you can have on your roster now. So in Nebraska's case, heck, that helps them out there as well, because now you can have as many walk-ons come on as possible, So you're not limited to that 25 guys a year. That boom, you're bringing in as many guys as you need to, and have as many bodies out there, for practice situations and so forth. So yeah, I think you're just going to see bigger roster sizes out of this deal, and it's just a way to, like I said, even the playing field a little bit, and let everybody round out their 85 scholarship limit with whatever type of players that they can get a hold of these days.
Greg, you were talking about when I posed the recruiting question about, what that used to look like for Nebraska as a member of the Big 12 going to Texas versus what it looks like now, going for a different type of player, going for a second or third level player, let's say. And then we've got Logan asking another question, considering Vince Winta. Is that how you pronounce that? And Major Applewhite.
Brian Applewhite.
Brian Applewhite, Major Applewhite, Texas quarterback. Yes, that's where my brain was. If they can make any movement in Texas.
You know what? Anytime you bring in a Texas guy, that's going to help you recruit the state of Texas. And you've already seen him instrumental. They have added 3 players in the transfer portal alone out of the state of Texas that had ties to Brian Applewhite. So I think that definitely helps. And, I don't want to make it sound as bleak as I kind of did earlier when I talk about Nebraska not being able to recruit the state of Texas. It's just harder. Obviously, you're always going to be, looking at the state of Texas because it produces, it's one of the top producing states of football talent out there. So yeah, you don't ever not recruit the state of Texas. My point is, it's just harder. The pitch to get a Texas kid to Nebraska is just a little bit harder playing in the Big Ten. Now that might change as Texas goes to the SEC. I think all of a sudden, you might start getting more players out of the state of Texas because, all those schools are recruiting them, and maybe now that the Big 12 doesn't look like such a great option anymore. And you know what? Why not play in the Big 10? It's not that much lower than the SEC. So, if you can't play in the SEC, Big 10 is probably your next choice at this point, especially with what's kind of imploding with the Big 12 that we've seen here. So, yeah, I definitely think it's an advantage to have some Texas guys around, and it doesn't hurt to have Texas kids on your roster, which they do, and they always help out in recruiting Texas kids as well. So, yeah, you're always going to see them get guys out of the state of Texas. We just don't know what type of numbers. Nebraska, since Scott Frost has been here, you kind of see Nebraska recruit the Southeast a little bit more than they do Texas. With Nebraska's coaching ties in South Florida and Georgia, Louisiana, you've kind of seen Nebraska recruit those states a little bit heavier. But that being said, like I said, Brian Applewhite came in here and closed the deal on 3 players out of the state of Texas since he got here. So I like it.
All right, folks, appreciate you being here on our Nebraska show that rolls on through the summer and takes you all the way to August. If you missed it, we had Parker Thune on from 247 Sports to break down the Oklahoma side of the big matchup in week 3 against the Huskers in Lincoln. We know what happened last year, 23-16. We know what happened with Nebraska in 1-score games. If they flip a bunch of those, and they got that one at home this year, it's doable. I think it's definitely doable. And but Northwestern's number 1. Northwestern Big Ten game, can't overlook that one. And I think we're just about 12 weeks away.
Yeah, definitely under the 100-day mark now. So yeah. Gonna be fun.
All right, Greg.
Definitely.
Appreciate you being here. This guy's made it happen 71 weeks in a row. We've been on here. So
boy, we're getting old, aren't we?
Well, we're 71 weeks older than we were, and I thought we were old then. So yeah, you're right. So that's not the good news, but the good news is we're still breathing and talking and smiling. So that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, without Greg, we don't have a show. So I hope everybody appreciates Greg being here every week. Support our Nebraska channel any possible way that you can, whether that's financially. We got Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, folks, in addition to the super chat here. Like the videos, share them out there, join our Discord on Patreon, do all those good things. All right, Greg, it's going to be a big weekend. So
We'll have
rest
a
up.
whole recap. We'll have a whole recap next Tuesday.
Nice. All right, everyone. We'll see you back next Tuesday. We're doing an LSU show in 15 minutes. So see you on the main channel.
I better go.